Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We are here twice a week, every week, and have been for about 5 years, helping to continue to bring you critical information, help you grow your law practice, be your best lawyer self. And no different today. We've got a great friend and guest of the show, and Julia. How you doing, Julia?
Great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really happy that you're here. We're going to have some good times. Of course, have to start with the quote of the show. This is a Peter Drucker. Do what you do best and outsource the rest. That's a great mantra, and it rhymes. So good,
Yes.
good stuff there. So welcome to the show, and please, share why that's your quote of the show. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's a tough lesson for not just law firm owners, but business owners in general to learn to outsource what you're not good at or the things that you hate doing. It took me a while to get there to kind of let go and loosen the reins, but it's something that I tell all my clients to do and do as often and as much as possible.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it's really, delegation and automation. The folks that listen to this show, they're just hearing me harp about it all the time. And, the way I see it is, the fewer hats that you can wear, whether you're at a firm or you're running a firm, the better. It's just too overwhelming when you have five, six, seven different hats that you have to wear all day.
I agree. I speak with solo and small firm owners daily, and I'm often surprised by the number of hours that they're working and their workload. And like, outsourcing is there for a reason, and it will help you get to where you want to be in your practice.
Yeah. And we'll get into the reasons why lawyers don't delegate in a few minutes. But I wanted to introduce everybody to Julia Taylor. She's the founder and managing paralegal at Lev Legal LLC. Welcome to the show, and love to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to be in the legal space, working as a
Yeah.
paralegal.
Absolutely. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I was pre-law and decided to get a job in a law firm to see if I liked it. I quickly realized I did not want to be a lawyer, but I loved everything else about the legal field. So started off answering phones in the basement of a big firm in Orlando and just kind of moved my way up to different positions and management and finally in like firm administration. I worked with a really cool startup firm and just loved all the things about building a firm from the ground up, the logo, the staffing, and I thought there was a niche for it. When I worked in big law, I had so many resources available to me as a non-lawyer, and I was seeing all the solos and the small firms struggling to do document productions and all the things. And so I thought there was a need to bring big law talent to smaller, mid-sized firms.
Yeah. And then how do you go from that into running your own business where you're helping folks get paralegals?
Yeah, absolutely. It started, I was living in Atlanta and I hated the commute that I had to. Some days it was like 2 hours one way, if not more. And I was like, what can I do with these skill sets and also help these attorneys that are struggling on the other side? And so I just started tapping into my network to see who could use like paralegal help. And literally the day we turned on the lights, we had attorneys like, yes, I need this. And this was pre-pandemic and it's only grown since then. And then from that, other services started to develop as I got in and saw some of the needs of the firms and the software and back office operations part of things as well.
Yeah. And so what does Lev Legal do? What's your primary function?
Yeah, our main bread and butter is we provide US based paralegals and legal secretaries, typically with at least 10 years of experience to firms so they're able to plug in. I know there are a lot of services using overseas attorneys and things like that. We use paralegals who come from attorneys that have recommended them, who have worked at least 10 years in a US law firm.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we do some software consulting and systems consulting and training, and also subscription business management services. So all the back office things like billing and invoicing and newsletters,
Mm.
our attorneys can get that on a subscription basis.
Okay. Wow, that's really great. And I'll tell you, it's interesting how busy lawyers are that people have been delegating up, meaning that someone has left the firm and the associate, for example, and then the partners are doing associate level work, and maybe the paralegals are doing, the associate's job. Like it's everybody's like moving. It's going the wrong way. Instead of pushing down, it's pushing up, and it's driving, I can tell, a lot of lawyers crazy.
Yes, I agree. And there's just, I think the reason for that is it's hard to find really experienced talent that attorneys feel comfortable, delegating the work to and,
Yeah.
maneuvering. So I think that's where we've found a niche.
Yeah. And it's the trust factor too, that they feel like they need, if they don't have someone they can trust to get it done, or trust that they, with confidence, that I think that's where things start to break down, and why they may not want to delegate. There's people doing paralegal work every day that shouldn't be.
Right, exactly. And just getting, it obviously varies by practice area, but just getting a really good idea on like what market rate is for paralegals and associates and partners, and structuring the delegation based on that is key.
Yeah. Are there other reasons why you believe or see lawyers not taking advantage of hiring paralegals, whether that's in a full-time capacity or in a virtual or even a part-time capacity?
Yeah, I think so. So many solos and smaller firms are geographically limited, and so the talent pool just isn't there sometimes. And so often they're having to pull in entry-level people or people who have worked in medical practices or things where, the job pool is a little bit more plentiful. So outsourcing is a good resource for just tapping into nationwide talent that isn't available locally. And just being frank, the cost of staff has grown astronomically. And so when you look in adding benefits and PTO and all those expenses that also come with having employees, many firms are just priced out of that.
Yeah. And with your main service of helping to find paralegals, is that under your umbrella, or are they bringing them on under their umbrellas as employees?
Yeah, so we manage all the paralegals, payroll, taxes, benefits, and everything like that. So we take care of those expenses for the firms. The firms only have to worry about paying for the billable work that they receive.
Okay, got it. So they're not really taking on the same level of overhead from one capacity, as they would if they just hired someone full-time in-house. And
Exactly. And
okay,
and
yeah,
they can get as many hours or as few hours as they need. So you're able to get a full-time paralegal without taking on the liability of all the taxes and so on.
okay, all right. So then let's get into the weeds on this, because this is a topic that lawyers really need to consider when they're over their skis and overwhelmed by all the work. So what should attorneys and law firm owners consider first when deciding which task to outsource versus keeping it in-house? Because there's, different types of work that you can, keep in or take out.
Yeah, I always start with what are the things that are making you miserable that you feel like someone else should be doing. I know you can always get into finances and things, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but I just start with genuinely, what do you dread doing when you get up in the morning and go to the office or sit at your computer? And do you feel like those are things that could be delegated? So starting there and just getting rid of those things that take you out of like building your business and bringing you joy. And then from there, obviously looking at it from a financial standpoint, what's billable, what's not. Am I doing too many non-billable tasks that should be delegated to someone with, less experience or a lower billable hour rate or none at all? So I always start with those two things.
Yeah. And why do lawyers seem to wait so long? Like there's all these things that they maybe have identified that they're doing, and then they just put it off and put it off. Is there fear there? Is it just a money thing? Are they feeling like they've got to try overseas?
Yeah, I think definitely finances always come into play. And I think it's looking at, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And like the average contract paralegal or contract attorney rate is usually way less than what you can bill them out market. So if you're doing billable work, even if you're not, you're doing flat fees and things like that, you can build your flat fees around what those market rates are. So it definitely is a lot of fear around finances. It's a lot of fear around giving up control, especially if you're outsourcing overseas and, wanting to have that human connection with your clients that sometimes is difficult to do. when you're using overseas talent.
Yeah. And maybe they're just not understanding the profitability of it, so can you explain how it works? Because I think there's attorneys. Let's just give an average of 450 or something an hour, and then they're doing just about everything at their firm, for example. But where are they missing the boat there on the profitability side?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a couple different things. Number one, I think about, let's just say, hey, I'm one attorney and I could really use some additional attorney help. There are services out there where you can tap into some amazing outsource attorney talent. For example, like law clerk, and you're able to go on there, and there are some amazing, well-rounded, experienced attorneys on there. And if you're billing out at 450 an hour, but that attorney's rate on a platform like that is $100 an hour, you're making, you know, over 4.5 times, what the attorney's billing out, and that's a profit center without you having to do the work. And it works the same way with paralegals. Obviously, the rates are a little less, but they work the same way. In addition to that, being able to tap into um, practice areas and talent that you don't have access to, whether you can't do that work yourself or you are, again, geographically limited, you're able to grow your practice and not do that work yourself. So add practice areas and disciplines and things like that.
And how different is it when they're in person working at an actual firm versus being virtual? And how do people determine which direction to go? And is it just based on how much paper they have versus how much they have sitting in a Dropbox, for example?
Yeah, and then that goes into all the things that you can outsource. You can outsource someone to come pick up your paper and scan it so you can work with a virtual attorney or a virtual paralegal. I think office space is often very expensive and you don't always need that. So you could downsize your office into like a virtual space or a co-working space because you don't need 4 or 5 offices for people to sit in. You just need somewhere to maybe hold meetings and things like that. So it's looking at your overhead and your budget and seeing where you can cut those things. And oftentimes you can, reduce your rent and use that to pay for the contract attorneys and things like that. So I think it's a combination of things, but it all goes back to just kind of looking at your overhead and your budget and even looking at, hey, I'm not paying myself what I should. Okay, well, if you had, 2 or 3 contract people billing, these hours while you're doing business development, those hours kind of pay for your salary and your
Yeah.
expenses and things as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I look very carefully and closely at lawyers' activities because if they're not, doing the high level, enjoyable work and the business development, and they've got all the stuff that they're doing beneath that they're focused on, it's a big concern for me because how are we going to be as profitable as possible or use your time as wisely as you can when you're stuck in the mud doing things that are below your pay grade? It just drives me up the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone told me you have to either work on your business or work in your business. And obviously, as an attorney, there are things that you still have to do, but there are so many things I see, law firm owners doing that they just absolutely shouldn't be doing. So it's, looking through it and figuring out, is this really something that requires my expertise and input that the client paid for versus this is just work that needs to get done and it can be delegated.
Yeah. All right. So a lawyer's listening right now and saying, I have made a decision that I want to outsource. What are the common mistakes that individual lawyer may make in attempting to do it properly?
Yeah, I think not being clear about what it is that you want and need, you really do need to sit down, take some time and figure out, what your expectations are, what your needs are. Do you have the tools in place to do it? So for example, if you've been working with paper, what do you need to do to get that paper on a cloud-based system, so that it can be accessed by, staff that may not be in the office with you or Do you maybe need a case management software like a Clio or in my case where you can communicate with clients and, bill hours and see what everyone else on your team is doing? So you have to just get really clear about expectations and deadlines, timelines, tools that you want to use, that sort of thing. That's where I would start.
How about anything like personality wise? Like, for example, if a lawyer has a particular like tough personality or easy personality, should they be looking for someone that matches that as well? Or
I have found that opposites attract. So if I have an attorney that is really unorganized and, has all over the place, I will put them with a very structured OCD paralegal. So
yeah,
in that aspect, or, associate attorney or whatever it is, opposites definitely attract. Find people that play on your strengths or strong in areas where you're weak.
yeah, I love that. I love that. And any suggestions on the interview process? So you're working with an organization like yours. How does the selection process work? How do they get it through to the finish line?
Yeah, I always say whether it's a full job description or not, sit down and write down what you want, what you need, some of the tasks that you want to delegate. And that makes it easy when you're using a service to kind of match not just skill set, but it gives you a clear idea of the type of attorney that you're working with, that sort of thing. So write down what it is that you want and what you need. I go back and forth. There's some really great personality tests and things out there, but sometimes I think someone is overlooked because of a personality test. So always have those conversations. Those tools are great, and I have a lot of recommendations on those, but nothing beats just sitting down and having that one-on-one conversation with whoever you're considering hiring. And I've found it best to have a second opinion sometimes. So if there's someone else in your business that you trust, who can give you a second opinion about the person. And, it's always easy, especially if it's, if you have multiple people in your firm, like, hey, this is how this person likes to work. Hearing that information from a third party is definitely very helpful.
And is there an opportunity to sort of like test drive the car before you buy the car? For example, like can you give a paralegal a task to accomplish in the interviewing process to see how they handle it and work, or is that not sort of an acceptable way to go?
No, I definitely think that's a way to do it. We do something internally with the paralegals that we bring on that is very similar. So, obviously, protecting your information and any like NDAs and things like that that you need to put in place to feel comfortable to do that. Because I get that question a lot. Well, if I'm not sure, why would I give them this task? There are workarounds for that. But I definitely think test task or asking for writing samples, especially when you're looking at like contract attorney. Hey, can you show me a brief or a research memo and things that you've done previously? And then obviously always reference checks. And if you're looking for someone experienced, they should at least have one or two other like attorneys or firm administrators that they've worked under before that can provide that reference. I try to steer away from, hey, this person was just a coworker, and we try to find the actual lawyers that they've worked with before.
Got it. Got it. Okay. I think that really helps us understand, the availability and how to sort of decide and then kind of recruit and hire. And then is there an onboarding process that you recommend or something that they do to try to make sure that the good fit that they just identified gets implemented properly?
Yes, we recommend, and I when I work alongside firms in like a back office situation, we create onboarding checklist of, okay, not just like the, you know, software and hey, they need an email, but like what conversations do we need to have? What trainings do we need to set up? Do we need to, schedule CLEs and things like that if they've got certifications and things to keep up with? So I definitely recommend creating onboarding checklist, and there are so many AI tools now to do it for you. You don't have to do a lot of the like groundwork yourself. You can use a tool to get the framework done and then go in and customize it to your firm. But definitely having like an onboarding checklist. Some people will even do like a first day schedule, like, and schedule time throughout the day or the first week to, meet and go through things so that the information isn't piled on all at once.
Yeah.
Those are definitely things I recommend doing.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea of having like a first day, a first week sort of schedule of like what you're going to be trained on, what we need to work on, the time we're going to spend together. And then the second week maybe is a little less intensive.
Yes.
Maybe there's less shadowing or less, uh, but I don't think you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. Not, I don't want to say with trust, but like with
Mhm.
how you delegate. You want to delegate everything, but I think you need to also like trust but verify. So like work through for a week or two, like with maybe a high level of supervision and see how that goes, and then slowly start to wean away. Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, I agree. I had a conversation with a client today who hired someone who supposedly had, 20 years of experience in her practice area. And so she just kind of went in, like you said, 100 miles per hour. And it's like, I can give her all these things to do and didn't stop to think about, okay, well, every firm does things a little bit differently. Some firms are behind on technology and maybe she had to do these things manually. And it's like, okay, well, now I feel like she's spending a little bit more time than I anticipated. And that was my advice. I said, slow it down and let's take it one week at a time. Like,
Yeah.
what are the most pressing things that need to get done? Let's take two or three of those. Because sometimes it's not, hey, this person is a bad fit or they over promised on their skills. Maybe it's just this is a lot at one time. Let's slow down and take it one step at a time, one task at a time.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say trust but verify, because I think like I had a lawyer who's telling me that they've been doing business development for 10 years. And when I evaluated that attorney, it was they had done 1 year of business development 10 times. So it was the same, right? Sort of bad skills that weren't really, but lots of experience, but not anything that was making things happen. And so I think that's what you're saying a little bit
Yeah.
with, either old technology or just not being up to speed. So I think that, it's getting things moving, but I think you need to take it slow at first, regardless of what they might say they can handle. And then you mentioned a few minutes ago about technology, and it sounds like you have quite a bit of experience in that arena. Are there particular either new technologies or new automations that have come around the last year that you're excited about that you've been sort of sharing with people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love this word plugin called Ghostwriter Legal, and it's
I'm
very
sorry, say that,
similar
say that one
to
more
like a
time. I just
Chat
want to
GPT.
say that one more time. I apologize.
Ghost, yeah, Ghostwriter Legal.
Ghostwriter Legal. Okay, got it. All right. And is that you said that's a part of
Um,
ChatGPT or like it?
it's very much similar to it, but it's that plugs into Word. And it's a one-time subscription fee, and the founder of it is great. I got on a Zoom call with him and I was like, hey, I think this is a tool that would be really cool for my law firm clients. And he answered questions and showed me how to use it and spent all this time on it. So I think that's a really cool tool. And it's like for an attorney, you can say, hey, I'm a personal injury attorney working on a complaint and I want to sound aggressive, right? And it'll like tweak the language and help you work through that or whatever tone you want to have. And I think that's a really cool tool. So that's been a favorite of mine. Um, and then I just think the case management software out there, all the top players, Clio and Smokeball in my case, they are just really changing the game in terms of like automations and things like that. And they're getting better and better. And so, whichever one you choose, I think you're going to get a really cool product out of the box. And some of them are tapping into the AI already, and some are, not quite there yet, but they're getting there. And so I'm really excited to see how they incorporate AI into some of their automations and things like that. But, if you're not using a case management system, I always say it doesn't matter which one you use. Obviously, some are better for some practice areas versus others, but getting something and fully leveraging it and utilizing it and learning about the automations. Most of them have free trainings and certifications and things that you can take to get up to speed on that. But especially if you're going to incorporate a virtual team, a good case management software is really important.
Yeah, and if you are not like tech savvy or sort of a nerd for that stuff, I would definitely recommend working with the company or working with a third party to not only get you trained, but also to handle the customizations, because that's a big problem. Is like they give you something off the shelf in a box, and then you have all these things that you want out of it, or all these things that of angles of like how you want it done. That it can be done that way. It just isn't set up that way. So I just want to put it out there. Like when I did Lawmatics, and I'm not a lawyer, but using Lawmatics and loving it. And the automations are all customized to, you saw this when you signed up for the podcast, right? I mean, all the different forms were filled out. My contracts were automated. I've got, lists of people that I can email. So it looks like an email, but it's not, it is an email, but it's, it's customized. So I'm not writing 100 people, individually, which would take forever. So I just want to put it out there how important those things are as well. So I think what we're covering is like technology, delegation, and just like how can you really open up to focus on the things that are either highly billable or the things that can help you make more money, like business development and marketing activity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what you were saying about just hiring a consultant to do the case management customization for you. There are so many things that people sometimes don't even think about that can be outsourced. Both virtual receptionists that will answer the phones 24/7 so that you and your team don't have to do it and that you never miss a lead. Or medical records retrieval, or, just getting a newsletter and social media post out. There's dozens and dozens of things that will generate revenue for you, but don't require that you do any extra work, maybe than just, saying what your expectations are and, meeting frequently with the team that you're
Yeah.
outsourcing to.
Well, that's a great place to wrap things up, Julie. I appreciate that. Let's talk about your game-changing podcast. Now, I will tell you, this is one I've never heard of, and immediately when I saw it, I thought it was a book, but it's not. It's a podcast, and it's called CEO School. And
Yeah.
what the heck is that?
Yeah, it's just I love it. It's a very inspirational podcast from a woman founder. And she starts every episode saying, less than 1% of women business owners reach seven figures. And so her mission is to help women get there. And when you think about how many millions of women there are that have small businesses, the fact that less than 1% of them hit that mark is it's just remarkable. So they give tips and tricks on business development, personal development. They have other female founders and, well, not just female, but founders in general that come in and have crossed that seven-figure mark. And so while it's not legal specific, I've learned so much from that podcast. I listen as soon as a new episode drops in. I get the notification. And I just think it's really cool what they're doing.
Awesome, awesome. Well, everybody check that out. And hey, as we wrap up, Julie, I want to thank our sponsors, of course, Law Her, which is another very inspirational podcast for women with Rankings.io, and Sonia Palmer. She was just on my show recently. And of course, Rankings.io, who's doing some great top level marketing for mostly PI attorneys and firms that are looking for a lot more leads. And I also just want to mention, if you're enjoying the show, everybody, please take a moment and just click on your Apple reviews and give us a kind review if you're enjoying it. Really appreciate that. Let more lawyers know that we are available for them to, be that lawyer, if you will. So if people want to get in touch with you, Julia, they want to learn more about your company, Lev Legal, what are the best digits for them to reach you?
Yeah, feel free to go to our website, lev-legal.com. There's a link there to request a free consultation and schedule that. And then I am trying to be as available on LinkedIn as possible. So find me, Julia Taylor, on LinkedIn and shoot me a message, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, give any recommendations of some wonderful outsourcing partners that I know, based on needs and things like that.
Yeah. And look, I'm in the weeds with the lawyers all over the country, and there is such a great need for your services. I would be surprised and somewhat disappointed if you didn't get a few calls from this podcast, because people are just overwhelmed right now. They need help, and they don't necessarily want to bring on a full-time person, from day one. They've got, they've got to start small sometimes. So I think you're such a great outlet for that. So thank you. And thanks for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom and letting us know more about what you're up to and how it's helping attorneys all over the country really get their act together. So much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and look forward to working with you again.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for spending some time with Julie and I today on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast, here twice a week again to help you be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.